welcome to Talking Films Online, the forum where we talk about cinema. Talking Films Online, or TFO in short, is an informal coming together of academics, teachers, students, researchers, filmmakers, and cinephiles interested in cinema, more importantly, interested in talking and writing about cinema. The online group came together quite spontaneously during the pandemic and lockdown in June 2020. Dr. Geeta Vishwanath, a Baroda-based novelist, artist, cinephile, and I have been coordinating the activities of TFO since its inception. So far, we have organized over 150 events, which include weekly discussions on a pre-decided film, besides a few month-long film festivals and discussions. We've had Iranian Film Festival, a short film festival, French Film Festival, East European Film Festival, and so on. During the month of June every year, to mark the anniversary of TFO, we organize a smartphone short film competition for students between 18 to 25 years of age, which we have made our annual anniversary event. We also organize workshops for research scholars, workshops on film reviewing, also collaborative talks with institutions all over India, universities, colleges, film clubs all over India. I request you to please mute yourselves. Those who are joining us, please mute yourselves. Thank you. Our aim is to get a conversation going around cinema and to get as many people involved in the process as possible. With all our events being online, anyone and everyone interested in cinema is welcome to our forum. We have a blog called talkingfilmsonline.wordpress.com, where we encourage all kinds of writings on cinema. We have a YouTube channel called Talking Films Online, where you can watch some of our discussions. We are also on Facebook. TFO is a private group on Facebook. We're also on Instagram and WhatsApp as well. Today, we are watching a Bangla film, MAHISHASUR MARDDINI. And this is one of those sessions where we are fortunate to have the filmmaker also join us in the discussion. This film, I understand, released in 2022. And to lead the discussion on the film, we have well-known critic, national award-winning film critic, Shoaib Chatterjee. Shoaib is a National Film Award-winning film critic, writer, and editorial professional based in New Delhi. His weekly film reviews appear on NDTV. He contributes columns and reportage to the Hindu, the Business Standard, the Gulf Today, and Civil Society magazine, besides other media platforms. He writes on Indian and world cinema. He has covered international film festivals in Cannes, in Toronto, for PTI, India's leading news agency since the turn of the millennium. He has scripted documentaries, including Harvest of Grief, a probe into the life of victims of Punjab's agrarian crisis, and Dil Ki Basti Mein, a journey into the cultural and social universe of Old Delhi. We hope we'll get to see these films sometime. He has authored a book on the life and work of poet-lyricist filmmaker Gulzar, and edited Encyclopedia Britannica's Encyclopedia of Hindi Cinema. As I said, we are also joined in the discussion today by the filmmaker Ranjan Ghosh. He is an erstwhile student of physics at Jadavpur University, and Ranjan Ghosh's fourth and latest feature film is MAHISHASUR MARDDINI. Its English title is A Night to Remember, which was completed in 2022, and very generously he's been screening it all over in many universities and colleges of India, such as Jamia, JNU, Pondicherry University, and we hope he'll also be coming to Hyderabad in a couple of months' time. Earlier, it became the first feature film to screen at any theatre festival anywhere in India when it was showcased at the India Habitat Center Theatre Festival 2022. And in 2019, Ranjan Ghosh's third feature, Aha Re, I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing this right, had made it to a coveted list of 25 all-time great Asian films about food by international website Asian Movie Pulse. Ghosh was confirmed Best Director 2019 award by the Satyajit Ray Film Society, Bangalore. The film was screened at international and South Asian and Indian film festivals in a number of places. There's a lot to say about him. His 2014 debut film was a tribute to 450 years of Shakespeare. In 2015, the film was included in the drama syllabus of Oxford Cambridge Royal Society of Arts. In 2016, it represented Bengali Shakespeare at the International Conference, Indian Shakespeare's on Screen, held by the University of London and BFI London to commemorate 400 years of Shakespeare's passing. This is, I think, a very brief introduction to a young filmmaker who has achieved a lot. Very happy to have Shoaib Chatterjee and Ranjan Ghosh and all of you who have joined today for the discussion of Mahishasur Mardini. Shoaib, it's over to you. You can take about 20 to 30 minutes or as long as you wish to get a conversation going on this film. And at some point, later, maybe Ranjan would like to hear all of us what we have to say about his film and then join in the discussion as well. Over to you, Shoaib. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhila. And hi, everyone. Good evening. And I presume that everyone has seen the film. So obviously, we are not going to talk about what the film is about, but what it sort of tries to achieve as a piece of cinema. So Mahishasur Mardini strings together several stories of gender discrimination and sexual violence and lays bare the gravity of the situation that women face on the ground every day of their lives in this country. So the film is, in a sense, a confessional addressed to all women, and I'm sure to all men who are sensitive to the need for an equitable, inclusive society where gender equality is a given. Women have been subjected to all manner of wrongs over the ages, and they still are. And that is the harsh reality that this film acknowledges and highlights. And it also sort of underscores the social fault lines, some of the social fault lines that allow gender discrimination to be perpetuated to the extent that it is in this country, and I'm also maybe in other parts of the world. So it goes without saying that Mahishasur Mardini has a feel and texture that is unusual, unconventional. It combines the rules of cinema, the approach of a proscenium theatre production, and the interpretative tools of socio-political observation to throw light on what ails a society that worships the mother goddess but denies women equality and dignity. It might not be wrong to suggest that Mahishasur Mardini reminds us to an extent of Satyajit Ray's Devi, where a woman trapped in a patriarchal social setup is assigned divinity and stripped of all agency. Devi explored one aspect of what women have to suffer in a society that denies them the right to be who they want to be. Mahishasur Mardini portrays probably a larger spectrum of that problem. The film's title obviously refers to goddess Durga, Mahishasur Mardini, the slayer of Mahishasur, demon king. It draws from real incidents and talking points to craft a layered portrait rendered in the manner of a theatre production of multiple acts. The characters walk into and out of the stage play their parts, speak their lines before disappearing into the wings. And in the end, all of them together contribute to the overall statement that the film makes. Mahishasur Mardini, which plays out over a single night and in a single location, narrates several tales. As each of these characters come in, they bring their own stories, and those become a part of the tapestry that the film is. The film is set in an old mansion where last-minute preparations are underway for Durga Puja. The idol of the goddess, which is made by a Muslim artisan, stands witness to the goings-on on the screen as it awaits ritual invocation for the 5-day annual festival. On the eve of the first day of the festivities, the owner of the house and 4 young tenants, all final year college students, spend the night receiving a stream of visitors. Among them is an army major and his wife. Then there's an elderly member of an NGO that performs the last rites of unclaimed bodies. Then there's a cynical politician, and finally an election strategist who also is related to the owner of the house. And so while all this is happening, they find a female infant abandoned in a garbage bin behind the house. Over the next few hours, they have to collectively confront and process several more unpleasant turns of events that expose the tensions that are simmering under the surface. None of the characters, as you would have all noticed, has a name. Their identities stem from the work they do and the ideas they propound, from the philosophical to the practical, from the emotional to the moral, from the political to the polemical. Each of the male characters in the film represents a facet of masculinity that explains why we are the kind of society we are. Besides providing the filmmaker with a handy prism through which he can view the ingrained prejudices and inherent ills that beset us as a society. The truths being articulated may seem too familiar to bear repetition, but taken as the sum of its parts, Mahishasur Mardini delivers a strong, incisive, and significant commentary not only on the status of women at home and in the world, but also on the state of contemporary India as a whole. On one level, the film alludes to the mythological epics, the abduction of Sita, the humiliation of Draupadi, the cutting of Surpanakha's nose. They all find mention in the film in lines of dialogue that the characters speak, and these underline a history, a tradition of misogyny. On another level, the plot incorporates little acts of omission and commission to emphasize the class divides that define our society and nation in the present day. And of course, this class divide aspect of the storyline becomes prominent as we go along, because initially the film appears to be about the gender biases, but actually it then expands and it sort of takes in a lot of other issues that we face as a nation and as a society. Its single light narration ensures a marked departure from the usual plot-driven cause and effect storytelling that's a staple of conventional Indian films. It catches the characters at a particular point in their lives, and it's just one night and one evening, and observes them and scrutinizes their views and their pasts. And so it blends two forms of storytelling, as I've already emphasized, the cinematic and the theatrical, and to help us enter into the minds of the characters. The entries and exits of the characters and the manner in which space is utilized is steeped in the traditions of theater. And on the other hand, the peeps that the film gives us into the past of the characters through reminiscences and flashbacks, and the blocking and the staging and the lighting and the lensing are obviously drawn purely from cinematic practice. And the flashbacks, I mean, to my mind, are like visual thought bubbles. They're not like the regular flashbacks where you have a character narrating a story to another character, and then the film going back into the past. These are all thoughts in the minds of the characters we see on the screen. And these thought bubbles uncover the recesses of the minds of the people that we are watching on the screen and helps us understand them better. So the present in the film, the present scenario in the film, it spans just a few hours, as I've said, stretching from evening to dawn, and with a dark, disquieting night in between. It unfolds in the courtyard of this vast mansion. The past, seen from multiple points of view, is staged in spaces inside the same edifice, which I think Ranjan will speak about when he comes in. The flashbacks serve the purpose of revealing the inner demons that haunt the protagonist, be they female or male, none of whom, as we ultimately discover, is completely blameless. The film is peopled by an array of women. At one end is an Indian Air Force test pilot readying for a space mission. She is the owner of the house. And the other is a destitute girl who has been gang raped and burnt alive near a graveyard. So it's the entire spectrum. And the death of the girl sparks communal rioting in the area. So, as I have pointed out already, the film is, however, not only about women grappling with gender discrimination and social obstacles. It also probes the thinking of violent, myopic, self-serving men who stand in their way or seek to engage them in ways that betray brazen toxicity. Indeed, MAHISHASUR MARDDINI does not merely present a one-dimensional narrative about wrong women. Yes, a few of the women we see or hear of on the screen are grievously wrong, but it also delves into lapses of judgment the seemingly sensitive but privileged and entitled individuals make when it comes to dealing with people who are lower in the pecking order. That creative choice gives the writer the scope to articulate his concerns in a manner that is both comprehensive and pointed, especially when the film is at its best. MAHISHASUR MARDDINI is at its most tension when it calls out, if only in passing, majoritarian narratives and the culture of hate and division that gnaws at the vitals of the nation. One of the men asserts that the only true borders, and this man is the political, the election strategist who comes in late in the film. He asserts that the only true borders lie between day and night, life and death, hope and despair, and the man-made borders, and man-made borders count for little. Unfortunately, as it transpires, long after this utterance, these insignificant borders do the most serious damage to humanity. The politician gets the rough end of the stick from both the woman who is days away from leaving for Russia to train as a cosmonaut and her pugnacious young paying guests. Many a wrongdoing is laid at his door, but this man isn't projected as the fount of all the problems that we face. What is more, he's allowed to get his own back occasionally. He takes jabs at popular notions that have gained currency owing to their unquestioning perpetuation. He asserts how the privileged class that has traditionally wielded power in this land conveniently labels dissidents as outlaws and goes after them. And sometimes it is an intransigent tribal king, isn't MAHISHASUR one? And sometimes a student leader from a summarily othered community, the politician says. So basically now, what this film is doing for us is providing a composite portrait of a time when we are staring at a rod that is only going deeper and deeper, but although it is very clear, it's very clear which side the film stands. It is extremely sort of non-judgmental in the sense that it's throwing up a lot of ideas and people say what they want to, and then the audience is allowed to decide what to make of what's going on the screen. So I think to that extent, it's also a very different film as far as the cinema of women's empowerment is concerned, because a lot of films about women's empowerment tend to limit themselves to uh, just one theme and one issue. This one is almost like a political film, a socio-political film that sort of embraces a wide range of ideas and themes and subjects, and allows the audience to sort of dig into the different aspects, the different depths that it explores. So, I mean, that's my basic introduction to the film, and of course, I love the film, and I've written about it, and a lot of people have loved it. But it's not the kind of film that audiences weaned on commercial cinema, no matter which language it is from. I mean, it makes demands on that sort of audience, and that's why probably it requires, it needs to be seen widely and by university people in universities, and by cinephiles who love cinema that provokes them, that challenges them, that makes them think a little differently. Because cinema in our country, as we all know, is primarily meant for entertainment. I'm not suggesting that Mahishasur Mardini does not entertain, but it's entertainment. It lies in the provocations that it sort of dovetails into its narrative. And again, when I use the word narrative, it's not a narrative of in a conventional sense, because it's not a film that moves from A to B and B to C and C to D. It has this non-linear sort of experiential sort of style and approach. And so, is that how many minutes have I spoken? 20 minutes?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So no, I said instead of just me speaking, maybe I could also come in with with answers to questions that people might people who've seen the film, have just seen it. I've seen it a few times already. In fact, I could have seen it one more time because Ranjan had sent me the link, but I felt a little ill, so I couldn't do it. So maybe thoughts and questions from people who have joined us and who have seen the film might sort of take this discussion forward.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving us such a wonderful overview of the film, pointing out what are its specificities, also how it is different, even while it puts forth its socio-political issues, the mode in which it does so. I think you've laid out a number of issues related to the film. Anyone who wants to come in at this point, you're most welcome. Just unmute yourself so I know that you want to come in. Yes, Geeta, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Shoaib, for your introduction, and thank you, Ranjan Ghosh, for being present here. It's always nice to have the filmmaker in the group. As Shoaib has just told us that it is a different kind of a film. I too found it different, especially in the way you present it like a drama rather than, like a stage play rather than a film in that sense. You even have the curtain closing at the end of the film. And but the characters, I found them more like, stock characters, like archetypes, rather than individualistic. So that was something that struck me while watching the film. And also the issues that are raised, it was kind of, as if there was some kind of an effort to be politically correct and to bring in all the issues that, the women's issues that plague Indian society. And then to trace it back to mythology. Of course, it has been done, and even in common public discourses, we do tend to, when we talk about women's issues, we talk about how goddesses are worshipped, but women are not respected. So, so there also I found a bit of a very problematic linkage of contemporary issues with mythology. But probably we have the filmmaker here, so he will be in a position to explain why he did, why he made the film in this particular manner. Especially, I'm interested in knowing why you chose the stage format, to present it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geeta. Maybe we'll ask Ranjan to respond in a after a couple of rounds of discussion, because Anil Srivastava had also unmuted himself. Maybe Anil wants to speak. Please go ahead, Anil. Do you want to come in now? Anil, can you hear me?
No, actually I did it by mistake. I didn't want to say anything. Okay. So I'm just listening. I just want to listen. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Anyone else who wants to come in? While others are gathering their thoughts, I had a couple of things to say, Ranjan, about the film. I mean, it's, in terms of, let's say, for a gender studies class, I would love to use this film as a way of initiating discussion, because, as Geeta was saying, and as Shoaib was also mentioning, there's such a range of issues that you pick up in the film to kind of, to raise these as ways of stirring the conscience of people. But that you chose to do it in the backdrop of the festivities and the puja that is happening, and all that. And Shoaib, I mean, it was so surprising that you also began with the reference to Devi. It's a film I teach, and I thought that it's because of it's a film that is very close to my heart, and I've watched it with several batches of students. So I thought this is some unique obsession that I have, and so I'm seeing everything in the backdrop of this film, so of Raise Devi. But in terms of what this film is trying to do vis-a-vis Devi, which I was also thinking a little bit about, Ranjan. There is a sense of some of these women, being in a stage of having arrived, becoming woke, and also looking back on their previous selves, previous unwoke selves, if one wants to call it that. So, and what I thought was very interesting, and maybe this is something that you're, you do very consciously, is that, and Shoaib mentioned it, mentioned these flashback sequences as thought bubbles. I was thinking that these are meant for us as audience to recognize that these are characters who have changed, who have evolved or whatever, within quotes, from their previous selves to where they are now, including the person who is training as an astronaut. So these are not things that are made public. They are not put out on a public trial, as it were. Like it's not openly told. It's something that is going on in their minds and as audience, we are privy to those thoughts. Whereas when the politician comes, or even when the strategist comes, everyone kind of are eager to expose them. Whether it's what the strategist does on the side, with the dating apps, or the kind of scandal that human trafficking scandal that the politician is involved in. So they are put out on a trial. So it looks like there are two levels. One, where the other characters somehow have a position of greater moral superiority, through which they are putting other characters out on trial. And what gives them that moral sense, very sorry, is probably their own process of awakening. So this is something that I was wondering. And secondly, I was also thinking, of the staginess of it. It's very interesting, the mode that you have adopted. It's almost like the proscenium stage, but then it's not only that. So clearly it is a mode of representation. It's not about a stationary camera, of your stage filming the proscenium stage. It's not that. So it's a different kind of staginess. So, and I thought that these young people who are here, they all seem to be, I don't know whether, how far I can take this reading. They seem to me in some ways like the chorus. So they are commenting at times, they are withdrawing at different points in time, and they have things to say, taking certain characters to task and all that. So I was just wondering, I mean, did they perform that kind of a function? So offhand, these are some of the things that came to my mind. Maybe I've gone on for too long. I also need a sip of water. So I'll yes, Shaibal, you have unmuted.
Yeah, I mean, very interesting point that you've made is that there are two sets of people here: the younger ones and the two, one politician and the election strategist. See, so now my reading again would be a very personal reading. I mean, I just feel that these young people are far more idealistic. I mean, they don't see being woke as a problem because they think they're evolving as human beings, as people. Whereas the older people like us are more cynical. We even look down on woke people because we think, oh, he's just trying to impress us with his ideas, but maybe, so there's this dichotomy that I think the film brings out. It's also, again, as Geeta said, that it's maybe they're like archetypes rather than what you would describe as living and breathing characters. But on the stage, that's something that is often done. I mean, you have people who represent a certain idea, or certain level of morality, certain emotion. So that's a very theatrical methodology, a method. Also, I think this film also, one, Devi is of course an instant reference. It is also a sort of tribute to Bengali theatre, which has a very long, dynamic, history, and also, of course, there's Devi. So you have Satyajit Ray, the cinematic maestro, and you have theatre on the other hand, and in the backdrop, Durga Puja defines Bengalis because, and I think when the film was made, Durga Puja had just earned this intangible cultural heritage tag from UNESCO, and so all those things, I think Ranjan will probably be able to tell us much better than. I mean, this is what I feel, and this is what I've. Although yes, of course, I mean, Geeta's point that maybe these characters are types rather than living, breathing characters, and your point about these two sets, one, the older ones who are like morally probably they've dropped a little, and the younger ones they're still evolving, and for them what they've done and what they these wrongs that they did are far more recent, and they are like people who are probably have this sense of guilt, while the two older characters are hardened. I mean, they are like hardened souls. So I think that is something that I read into the script. And of course, I mean, when Ranjan comes in, we will be elaborate on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else would like to come in at this point? Please unmute yourself so I know you want to speak.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, please go ahead. Debajyoti Guha, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I have a question directly to Ranjan sir and also to you all. I found a few interesting things in the films that when the film begins and the light goes out in the beginning, and then we see some magical fireflies flying around. We also see some magical feather at the end of the film. So, and then the characters are all nameless, and there are no names of place mentioned or the time. So these things, along with the fact that the characters entry and exit without any causal effects, like nothing is really connecting the film to as to what is going to happen next. And there is a commentary on the social stigmas and everything. To me, these things feel like he's trying to depict theater of the absurd or absurdism in the film. So I have a question towards Ranjan Ghosh, whether that was a conscious choice or whether that's an accidental outcome of the film. Like, was it theater of the absurd? That is all.
Okay, Ranjan, please make a note of these questions. We'll come back to you because Ajanta had unmuted herself. Ajanta, please go ahead.
Nikhila, my question is the same, around form and staginess. And this is a question we've come back to so many times. So if we are going to talk, so I am taken back now to our discussions, from Rian Dilmon through Aparna Shen, through whatever. So how then, and this is a question to all of us, how then do we evolve narrative strategies for the so-called women-centric film? This is also, something that Malavika and I are trying to think through. Can we have how do we define the woman-centric film today? And here is a young filmmaker who's thought about these questions very, very, in great depth. So it's a kind of very open question. And I was just taken back to so many of these great discussions we've had. And thanks for introducing such a great film, TFO.
Okay, thanks, Ajanta. Anyone else would like to come in now? Tarakeshwar, Madhurima. Yes, Shoaib, you want to?
Yeah, because of this question about what strategies should be evolved, to make women-centric films. I mean, from my, my domain of work, I mean, I watch Hindi films and commercial Tamil, Telugu, Kannada films all the time. Generally, a lot of Hindi films in particular tend to believe that a woman is empowered when she is actually mimicking men. I mean, she's doing the things that men do, and they. So I mean, that's a very sort of a very basic, very unimaginative way of portraying women who are empowered. Because I think men, I mean, a lot of great feminist films in this country, particularly Sham Benegal and Gulzar, and I mean, Ranjan is a man, and there are a lot of other men who make films that are about women. And if you're talking about Jean Dillman, we obviously one of the greatest women filmmakers ever made that film. And so, I mean, so is there a difference? I mean, this again, instead of sharing a thought, I'm asking a question that can be discussed. I mean, is it necessary for films about women, about women's empowerment, to be made by women? I mean, can't men also do as good a job? But I mean, that's the question, because a lot of men make terrible films about women because they don't think like women. I mean, so I mean, I'm a man, so I really don't know whether there's a problem there, and whether that needs to change. Because if women start making, a lot of women also make very commercially successful films. That has happened in Hollywood, as has happened in India, and which are films that are, that are action-packed and the typical formula films, which is also the other side of it. I mean, should there be more women directing regular mainstream films? Because then the narrative changes. I mean, even if slightly. So again, that's the question. Do we have a lot of ladies here who could probably reflect on this and tell us what they feel?
We have already discussed John Dillman in this on TFO forum a few months ago. I'm not sure Ajanta was asking the question of who makes these films. I think the question was more open-ended. I mean, what is a woman's film, or what is a film which has woman in some ways, or women's issues in some ways at the center of it? Ajanta, do you want to respond, or we'll keep it open?
Sure, Nikhila, and I'm very happy to keep it open. You're absolutely right. It's about narrative form. And we were, you remember the discussion we had, Laura Mulvey, the male gaze, and So, and we've discussed this also with Apurna Sen, and she works across such a range of formats. And I was so interested also in the way in which this filmmaker is it epic theater? Is it Brecht? What is it? And so reflections of that nature. So thank you very much.
Yeah, anyone else would like to come in now? Rajan? Tarakeshwar?
Okay, if there is no one else, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you. To begin with the debate that is happening, women-centric, can anybody make a women-centric film, or what is a women-centric film? Why do we need to define something as women-centric or not? Is the question that we need to address. So gender is a more analytical term that can be deployed to look at how the gender issues are framed in a particular narrative. That could be a more fruitful question to ask. But that apart, and then the film as an art form is a collective art form. But somehow we reduce it to a particular person, a director. That is another, I think, methodological issue that we need to negotiate. Of course, there are RTF films, but in spite of that, the form itself is a collective art form. Look at this film itself. The camera does a wonderful work, and the way camera frames certain things, and the way the narrative unfolds they're quite interesting. Sometimes they go together, sometimes there is a divergence. That is where I think uh, uh, we need to think about. Uh, in spite of our um, best, what I would say, intentions to be politically correct, there are instances in the movie where it's slightly, I felt odd about it. Um, if I have to use the term, let's say, the Badrulok characters, instead of in terms of generation, looking at the characters, if I can look at it in terms of Badrulok and non-Badrulok, they are, if Badrulok term is a problematic category, the educated and the quote unquote the uneducated characters. Um, the one who commits the rape, uh, they're uneducated, and the one who is perpetrating the violence on the woman who is tied to the tree, they're also uneducated. This educated student, ex-student leader, who is an election strategist, is trying to save it, but he is unable to do it. And I'm not saying that the Badulok characters or the uh, educated characters uh, are not guilty of perpetrating the um, gender violence. Yes, they are also doing it, and they are also realizing it. There is also a transformation in the characters, but there is a critical reflection on their part. But this kind of critical reflection is not found in the other characters. That is quite, I thought, is interesting, but that should not be taken as a uh, uh, big issue because, as everyone has said, here the characters come to illustrate a particular idea or a thesis. So, in that sense, it's a thesis film, so it can be overlooked. But that's where the kind of I don't know whether it's intentional or in spite of being having a best intentions to be politically correct, there are certain issues which slip out of our hands, or because it's a collective effort, they can go in any way. So in that sense, I think uh, we need to be careful while analyzing a collective art form like film rather than attributing it to a single individual, either to praise or to blame. I think that's the point that I wanted to make at this point of time. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, okay, Shaipal, please go ahead. You want
No, because just
Yeah.
two things. One is that, of course, gender, women centric as a term is problematic. I know a lot of filmmakers who, women filmmakers who object to the term. They say we are filmmakers, not women filmmakers. Like, do you call men filmmakers? They are filmmakers. So, but the point is, if you take Hollywood for instance, only like 6% of Hollywood directors are women. I don't know the exact statistic for India, would probably be even lower. And so, an industry, there's this movement in Europe which is called 50-50. There's a group which fights for, the inclusion of more women, films by women, directed by women in film festivals, so that a lot of the festivals are basically boys clubs where, like 60 to 70%, sometimes 80 to 90% of the films are made by men. So that also needs to change. I mean, see, it's one thing to say that we have to look at a film as a film and not worry about, whether it's about a woman or a man. But obviously, the gaze that defines the film is important, and that's why I think more representation, more diversity of filmmakers is probably required, and that is an important reason why uh, really big films are never given to women directors in Hollywood or in Bollywood or in any other industry. I mean, it's very, very rare. I mean, in Tamil cinema, for instance, even in Malayalam cinema, which is a state where, which is like the most literate in India, you really don't have that many female directors, and that is why most stories that are told, and I'm not saying that these stories don't have strong women characters, but these are women characters that are, seen through the eyes of men mostly. So maybe that, if that changes, we won't even need to have this discussion, because then films will automatically, there'll be balance in the films that we consume, we watch, and and like. So that's one thing that I thought I'd share, because that is what causes the problem. I think this, the lopsided nature of the power in the hands, too much power in the hands of men.
I'm not sure if we are talking about a representation of women which is satisfactory in some ways on all accounts. So what is that? What is it that would be perfectly satisfactory? Is it that is it a film where all these, I mean, there is discussion of gender, there is discussion of gender as intersectional category, there is discussion of the complexity. I mean, so what are you going to take? Which boxes are you going to take to make this? I don't know if, Tarakeshwar was talking about that, nor do I think that, with the coming of women filmmakers, a very important, aspect is going to be addressed, which is the inherent, issue within the film industry, which, in terms of distribution of resources, who gets to tell a story, who gets to make the kind of film that they want to make, who is entrusted with the job, who becomes the automatic choice for a production house which is scouting around for directors, and whose film gets to be screened in the prestigious film festivals. Is it men? So certainly, there is an imbalance there which needs to be addressed. But these need not be, like there is no parallel or concomitant or correlation between women filmmakers, getting their say within the industry, within cinema as an institution, and the kind of stories or the narratives. I think Ajanta was drawing our attention to the kind of narratives that are coming onto the screen, not so much in terms of who is wielding the power, if at all, as a director, but in terms of what comes to be framed, first of all, as women's issues, what comes to the forefront, and how it comes to be projected as women's issues, and why at this point in time. I think these are issues related to larger politics of what filmmakers would who like to. I mean, at a certain point in time, you mentioned Shyam Benegal, what he thought he was making a film on, and what young filmmakers like Ranjan today think that they are making films on. So I don't know if Ranjan would have things to say now, and if he's ready to come in at this point, Ranjan. Sorry, I kind of, said, please listen to all of us, because, you may want to respond to all our questions together. Maybe now is the time. You may want to come in now, Ranjan. You've heard the discussion and the way in which a number of people have responded to your film. We can take up the various issues that have come up now, again, after Ranjan responds. Over to you, Ranjan.
First of all, it's a great honor to be present here among all of you tonight, and I thank the Talking Films Online for having screened this film and for getting Shoibal Chatterjee, a most well-respected individual and a film critic, that me and my entire generation of filmmakers, we really look up to his views, because we know that it is coming from a certain knowledge and a certain experience and way of looking at films and evaluating films. As I listened to Geeta Vishwanath-ji, to you, and to the rest of the respondents, you know, it is very difficult to respond to a work that you have already done and then to, you know, justify your work. And because it is, I look at films as a piece of art, and it becomes very difficult to respond particularly to certain things. First of all, you know, I would like to say that I do not really think that this is a feminist film per se. I mean, I would like to say that this is a humanist film. You know, it is a film on humanism. It is not really a film about, it is not really a feminist kind of a film. I do not look at it like that. It is woman-centric, yes, but why should it stop anyone from making a woman-centric film? Because as we all know, that every human being, every individual is comprised of or composes of a male side and a female side, the yin and the yang, the Ardhanarishwar, as we all know, that we all have a man and a woman inside of us too. So I think every individual can make a film on a man-centric film or a woman-centric film per se, is my belief. Secondly, I think that to come to the question about how this film was formed, which was one of the earliest questions of Geeta-ji, how this film came into being and what was the concept about, you know, how this all came into, I mean, how it all happened. It went back to, I should go back to the year of the Nirbhaya incident, which is more than 10 years. It is almost more than 10 years, a decade old, you know. That incident, like the rest of the country, it had shaken me up, and it had started thinking, I had started thinking that, is this how, you know, cruelty is heaped upon women? And, you know, I was really shaken up. And I started, you know, observing life inside and without, you know, inside of me and without. I started observing life, and I started making notes of, you know, how women are treated. We treat women, you know. And I found that, you know, whether it is reading the newspapers, you know, like every page that you read, whether it is the first page, whether it is the city page, whether it is the page on the state, whether it is the page on the nation, or whether it is a page on the world, you know, every page has some story or the other every day about some atrocity being committed on some woman or the other in any part of the world, rather in any part in India. That, you know, I started taking notes, and I also saw that within the confines of my known circle, within the confines of my own home, how we, you know, commit these crimes out of, you know, misjudgment and out of, you know, years of practice. And then I thought that, and then at the end of it, when I have found enough material, I saw that there was too many things, you know. There were too many things to deal with, you know, and it felt like, and it felt nightmarish. It felt something that one can't deal with. And then when you look at our mythology, when I looked at our mythology, whether it is the Ramayana, Mahabharata, or anywhere, you know, in also literature, like I had spoken about, I had mentioned Abhigyan Shakuntalam, which shows the story of Shakuntala and her husband, the king, Dushmant. You know, everywhere we saw these stories of misogyny, and throughout our culture, and whether it is in this part of the world, or whether it is in any part of the world, or in India or outside, we found these stories. And then I thought that this looks like a nightmare. And I had this feeling that probably this nightmare, we all are going through this nightmare. Probably this is not true. Probably this is all fiction. And we are actually, all of us are asleep, and it is a dreadful night. We are going through this nightmare. This is not true at all. And probably one day when we wake up, we will wake up to a much kinder world. Probably the reality or the truth will be much kinder, is what I felt. And, so this seems, whatever happens around me, whatever happens around us, seems like nightmarish, but seems to me like fiction. This is not real. This cannot be true. This cannot be reality. The reality is probably much kinder. And once when we wake up from our sleep through this nightmare, out of this nightmare, we will wake into a kinder and a nicer world, is what we thought, is what I thought about this whole situation. And then my mind went back to all these films that I have seen on women's issues, and they have each dealt with a single topic. And what wonderful films we have, whether it is Devi, whether it is numerous other films, I won't name any, numerous other films which have done full justice to so-called women's issues. I wanted to bring all of that under one roof, to represent this truth about the general idea, about the general situation of these atrocities, these cruelties, these injustices, these discriminations. I wanted to bring them under one umbrella. But when you do that, how to do that, and therein came in my thought of, locating it in one situation, in one locality, in one set, in one house, And as we all know, we know about the Aristotle's three principles of the unity of space, time, and action. I thought that, why not place all this inside the courtyard, or inside the Thakur Dalan, as we call it in Bangla, of a house where Durga Puja celebrations are going to start from the next day, what we call Shashti, So then that particular space, long back, what used to happen, we used to know as children, is that houses like this in villages or in small towns, we used to have something called the Naat Mandir. And in the Naat Mandir, all these beautiful stories would be told, wonderful stories about the yesteryears, about mythologies, about ghost stories about of our gods and goddesses, kings and queens and princes and princesses. All those would be told in a Naat Mandir, which would happen inside the house, inside the courtyard of a house. So I thought that, we could do that. And to bring all these issues under one umbrella, it would seem almost, unreal. And it would seem almost something which seems not possible, not plausible, not possible. So then I thought that this should be a night of fiction. This cannot be a night which is a true night. This has to be a night of fiction. It has to be an unreal kind of a night. I think Devajyoti Guha, Mr. Guho, he had very correctly mentioned about the theater of the absurd. Interestingly, I had this mind that all this would seem like a very stormy kind of a night, which is not making any sense, which is not making any meaning. And it would seem like a very dark and dank and a very disturbing kind of a night. And to that effect, I wanted to bring all these incidents together, like pages of a newspaper, like as you flip a page, as you keep flipping pages and you read all these incidents that are happening, I wanted to have that effect, the effect of a newspaper, of reading a newspaper through a week, of different pages and different things and different incidents. So while thinking about that, the structure came in. And so then I thought of, why not place it like acts? This would be something like a 5-act or a 7-act play. And why not make those single pages of a newspaper into a single act on this film, in this film. And thereby came the structure of the acts. And I thought that, we could do this as theater, because the characters, now to come to the question of Geeta ji, the characters, I wanted to represent a certain idea. The characters have not been assigned any name. And as you can understand, with a very intently, with an intention, they were not assigned any name because they represent ideas. They represent qualities of human beings. They represent a certain aspect of human beings. And they represent, they are more like metaphors, they're metaphorical. And therefore, I did not want to make them very, extremely real. There should be something, something rigid and something unclear about these like about these characters. And the mythological narration in the end would actually reveal what they are or who they are and what they represent and why they represent that. Like someone mentioned that I did not spare the human beings, neither did I spare the gods and goddesses. So that was the intent of, assigning that kind of character, that kind of aspect to each of these characters, and make them fictional. They would not seem like real people. Like if you look at the narrative, if you look at the film, from the beginning when the artisans are making the idol, and in the end when the artisans come back and everything, they would seem like real people. But these characters, the way they talk, the way they walk, the way they behave, the way they look at you, the way they are represented, even through our cinematography, they wouldn't really seem like real life characters to you. And that was the very intention, because they represent ideas. They are metaphorical characters. They are not real people. And in the end, when the curtains close, you will come to realize that, okay, so these were not real characters. These were metaphorical characters. So that is what has gone to you, that these are archetypes. That was the intention. That was the intent of the whole thing. And this like another reason of putting it under one space in that courtyard, in this rundown house, was to treat this house like a garbhagriha, so as to say, the sanctum sanctorum of a temple, in which only the truths will prevail. The truth will prevail and nothing else but the truth will prevail. That child, that little female child that was found outside in the garbage bin that they had rescued, she is truth herself, or himself. I would go with truth herself. That is truth itself, because she represents a certain idea that a child in distress, more so a girl child in distress, or a girl infant is in distress, is actually the whole humanity in peril. The whole humanity in total danger of destruction. You cannot really do this to the girl child. You cannot do this to a girl infant. You cannot do this to a woman. You just cannot, because then the world will be destroyed. You need to preserve her. You need to protect her. What was the idea? And she represents truth. And so she comes into this house, and whoever comes in touch with her gets a blister or gets a black spot, which through which they will go into some past, and they will come out and they will realize what kind of discrimination or cruelty or injustice they could have meted out to another like woman lives. So these are my scattered thoughts on the film, and also I felt that I humbly disagree with the being politically correct thing. I was not at all politically correct. It was not my intention to be politically correct. Neither did I think that I was politically correct in the film, because my focus was on the subject of the girl child, of the woman, and everything else actually falls aside. Everything else is not that important. But through these intersectional narratives, I also wanted to throw a light on the present situation in our society, as it were, like Shorbal Chatterjee pointed out, like Nikhila ma'am pointed out. It was to throw light on the Indian society, on the majoritarian narratives that we have, on the kind of hypocrisies that we all live, that we all actually indulge in, and that we all specialize in. But all these hypocrisies will eventually crumble. So I was not being politically correct. I wanted to be non-judgmental. If that is what you want to call politically correct, I wouldn't mind. But I was trying to present both sides of the narrative, and to bring both sides of the narrative, because the focus point was the girl child. And I brought both sides of the narrative and showed how futile all these exercises are, how futile all these borders are, while commenting on the socio-political scenario of the country, of the state, of the world, whatever you call it. So these are my scattered thoughts, and I would leave it at that, and back to you all.
Thanks, Ranjan, for now speaking as a viewer of the film. I think it's been about a year since you made the film. So now you're looking back at it in terms of what it meant, what the film means to you now, not just in terms of how you put it together, what are the influences, what were you thinking when you kind of wrote the film, but also in terms of how you view the film today from today's vantage point. Any thoughts, any comments that come up further from Ranjan's talk to us, presentation to us just now, reading to us of his film?
Also, I would like to add one more point. May I?
Yeah, please.
Also, I would like to add one more point about Debajyoti Go, about the theater of the absurd. And also we know that another quality of the theater of the absurd is an absence of a plot. So I really did not want to do another plot-driven story. My previous 3 films are actually plot-driven stories, which would function on the causality, like the cause and effect, and how we have a thesis, then we have an antithesis, then we reach a synthesis, how that synthesis becomes the thesis for the next step, and then you have another antithesis. I did not want to have this film like a plot, and since there were the acts, I wanted it to be absolutely this was in the scripting stage, as you can understand from the watching of the film. This is not an afterthought. That the film was scripted like an act, like a multi-act play, and these acts then in themselves they are not linked through any causal links. So this lack of plot and a meaningless world where there would be these atrocities on women and everything would probably attract the term of the theater of absurd to this film as well, to answer Debajyoti. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Anyone who wants to respond? Ranjan, I was just thinking that, Tarakeshwar's question about, I mean, even with Nirbhaya and the way things panned out after Nirbhaya, which became largely a kind of, something that shook the middle class conscience, so to speak, and demonized the ones who conducted, the rape on the bus, so to speak. So I was thinking again in this film, is that something that kind of, gets represented or gets repeated with the men, the people who are whipping, also the people in the crematorium, and also, so everywhere it seems as if the perpetrators of these horrific crimes, if there can be gradations of criminality against women, so those who seem to be the worst perpetrators are all the other, either they are class others or I don't know, maybe even religious others. So I was just wondering, this was my question too, and I think Tarakeshwar was also kind of highlighting this aspect. So while on the one hand, theater, the theatrical space is providing room for reflection, cleansing, looking back at the Bhadralok self, who is it othering? Who is it kind of laying its blame on, or saying they are, beyond reform? So they are the ones, who are bestial. So is that something? I mean, in your film, as I was watching it, that seemed to be a sense that I was getting as well.
Okay,
Would
so
you
let me respond to this very interesting question. I think that the film does not take any sides in terms of othering vis-a-vis the Bhadralok class or the gentlemanly class, or because while it is actually dealing with and talking about men perpetrating crimes on women, it is also talking about how women as well, they discriminate or they do injustice to women as well. At the same time, if you see whether it is at the crematorium or at the burial ground, if it is those people who are heaping the crime on women, at the same time we see the Bhadralok class, failing to do justice to women either. They are themselves, involved in women trafficking, or on the objectification of women, or on the domestic injustice being, meted out to them, or probably, like indulging in cheating them, or whatever. The Bhadralok classes also, have their fingers digged in deep. So I do not think that the Bhadralok class here is othering the others, or the film is actually othering the people who are not higher up in the pecking order. I do not think so. I think the film is actually commenting on the entire society, that brings in men, that brings in women, that brings in the Bhadralok class, that brings in the so-called other class, everyone into the same kind of a scenario. And having said that, since I belong to a certain class, it is also a self-criticism, I believe. And if I were to show that the Bhadralok class is doing injustice to women, or whether the Bhadralok men or the Bhadralok women, I'm also commenting on myself and my class. So yes, but there is no othering of as such, because I have also commented on the Bhadralok class and their ilk.
I had another question, if no one else wants to come in at this point. So the question is, question Ranjan, or I mean, anyone could come into. Ranjan, this husband of this astronaut, who is spoken about but never arrives on the stage or on the screen, as it were. One is, I mean, you're free to choose whom you want to bring onto the screen, represent onto the screen. But the other question that I was thinking of is it because there are certain limits to representation? I mean, what would a husband of such a progressive or woke or someone who is achieved look like? Maybe one can't even envisage it. Is that why the husband doesn't appear on the screen? I'm just thinking aloud. So he's spoken about, and there is also the reference to her past loves, or her past, the other men in her life who are there. But there is also a husband. Is it that he can't be brought with other men? Is that why he is not there? Or is it that we can't even imagine such a man? So that's why we can't bring him there.
No, it is not something so critical, really. This, I think the Bengalis would be able to relate to it better. Is that, in our legends, what happens is that when Devi Durga, she comes down for the Durga Puja with her family, that is her 4 children, Karthik, Ganesh, and Lakshmi and Saraswati, she leaves her husband, Lord Shiva, in the Himalayas. And Lord Shiva does not accompany her, to the plains, to her mother's house. So the husband is a distant one here. And since this is essentially a Bengali film, and since, the later mythology would identify the astronaut as Durga and the kids as her, like as her children, so automatically it would mean that Lord Shiva wouldn't be there, present as per the Bengali norm, so to say. That having said, that's why the husband character is not here. It's not there. But when I was writing about it, I had to write about the character of the husband. So I imagined it. It is also written there in my notes that he is probably a big industrialist who probably is settled elsewhere. He does not live in India. He probably lives in the UK or in the US or in the Far East. And he is immensely successful, immensely busy, and he loves his wife. He's extremely possessive about his wife. And for some reason, he is also very, very jealous because he's aware of her past love story with this corrupt politician played by Saswata Chatterjee, who comes to visit her. And he's aware of the fact that he's going to visit her tonight. And being so much in love with his wife and being a little too possessive about her, he kind of, keeps calling her. And he's essentially a good husband. And he's someone who could have been represented. But since that, we wanted to have those mythological connections of Lord Shiva not being able to, visit Durga's Maike, so to say. So that's why the husband is excused. But that is the character of the husband who loves her and who is a good husband. And there was no other problem in his representation in the story, other than the fact that he is a little possessive and he keeps calling her to find out what she's up to with this man.
There was something about the Kumari Puja where, I don't know, there was a little bit of conversation and then, something about, you still believe it and then it didn't go anywhere, I thought. Can you, I didn't understand it. So I'm just asking if it's possible to explain that.
Yeah, of course. So, we have this thing about the Kumari Puja, where a Brahmin girl of a certain age, when she's not lost her virginity, a virgin Brahmin girl is worshipped on the 8th day of the puja, on the Ashtami day, and she's worshipped as the female form of, as the live form of Devi Durga, a virgin child from a Brahmin community. So, the film ticks off these things that, in today's day and age, when you're talking about women going to Mars and women being astronaut and, talking about all this rocketry and everything. And on the other hand, you're still looking for a girl who's a virgin girl, who needs to be worshipped as Devi Durga. A girl who's not virgin, a child who's not virgin, or a girl who's not virgin cannot be taken for her, cannot be taken for as Devi Durga. And also the fact that you need a Brahmin girl to be, to represent that, not one who's not a Brahmin. So there is that little mention of that, yeah. So that is the whole thing about the Kumari Puja.
I was wondering if it was making a contrast between the homeless orphan girl who is raped and the Brahmin girl who is privileged to be worshipped as Kumari. I was just
no. There was no such thing. It is actually, this film is so much steeped in not only Indian, but also so much steeped in the Bengali ethos and the Bengali culture that a lot of these details would be lost on a pan-Indian audience, not really in sync with the Bengali way of, or the Bengali narrative of a Durga Puja. That is something which is a speciality, or which is a, how do I call it? Which is a, which is an aspect of this film, It is very Bengali in its ethos. Because, from childhood, I had read about, Satyajit Ray's very much, insisting on this point that your film needs to be rooted for it to be truly universal. Probably, I have tried to root it in Bengal, but these kind of details, come in the way of it being universal, when it is so much rooted that if you miss these kind of small details about the Bengali culture or, those individual cultures, then it probably gets in the way of the universality of the film.
Bengalis like Madhurima there. Would you like to respond, Madhurima? Anything to say?
Yes, I just had one observation or one comment. So that is all these characters, even though they are archetypes and they don't really have a certain sense of individuality, still we hear something about them, like the main characters, like the politician or the astronaut or these four paying guests who are staying there. But the violence that is happening at the backdrop, I feel like that is always in the margins, like they are never brought forward. We never get to hear about them. So even the mythology that is used, that is also very much related to the mainstream mythology. We are not talking about the injustice meted out to the marginalized characters in mythology. So was it a conscious attempt, like to point out like the middle class Bengali is always leaving out such issues? I just had this observation.
Okay, thanks, Madhurima. You want to, Ranjan, you want to respond, or we'll take another couple of observations, questions?
Yeah, I think if you have other observations as well, then we could respond to them together.
Okay, Sahil, anything to say? Sridhar, Sahil?
No, ma'am. I just enjoyed the discussion and the film was very nice in terms of discussing gender studies.
Okay, okay, thanks. Ajanta, did you briefly unmute yourself?
No, Nikhila, just by mistake. Sorry.
Okay, okay, fine. Yeah. Okay.
Just one last question,
yes,
Nikhila.
yes. Yes,
I mean,
please.
this is just a thought, playing the devil's advocate. Ranjan, why is the politician, the cynical politician who's also allegedly involved in trafficking, Muslim? I mean, has anybody asked you this question before? And also, I mean, this has been pointed out in the course of this discussion. The perpetrators are people who are they are domes. Domes are people who work in cremation grounds, and you have the grave diggers. So do only grave diggers and domes rape? So I mean, that's like I'm playing the devil's advocate, and Ranjan, if you think you need to answer, please do so. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Madhurima's and Shoaib's observations, Ranjan, you can take them together now. Yeah.
Yeah, for Madhurima's observations, I would have to say this, that I was not trying to attack the Bengali middle class per se. It was a story that we see around us, that I have seen around us. And I have tried to respond to the newspaper articles or to the news that I have read, and about a certain class that do their certain class that is involved or is entangled in this quagmire of violence against women. I've tried to tackle that. For this film, this is a film that I would not want to be made after 50 years, so that there is no need of, making this film after 50 years. And since I know my class and I know the middle class, I have tried to make a film on that. The subject of the next film could be something else. So this is not something that crossed my mind. So yeah, I don't have much else to add to that, unfortunately. And coming to Shoibalda's question, that why is the character a Muslim character? You know, why is the corrupt politician a Muslim character? And what was your other question, Shoibalda?
The perpetrators are domes and gravediggers.
Oh, yeah, correct,
the
correct.
people who raped the girl at
Yeah, correct, correct. So there are two things to it. One is I wanted a character who would represent the other in the narrative. You know, the Mahishasur in the Mahishasur Mardini narrative is the other in the whole story, where you have these fair-skinned gods and goddesses against this dark-skinned or the othered character called the Mahishasur. You know, and it is always the good versus the evil, wherein the good slays the evil in the Mahishasur Mardini narrative. You know, so Mahishasur is actually looked as the demon king, you know, and Durga is looked as the demon slayer. You know, so this othering I have to represent in terms of our society, our Indian society, and I did not find any better than a Muslim community and how they are othered in today's India. So that is why I assigned the character, I assigned the religion of the politician to a Muslim character who is summarily othered, you know, summarily like othered in today's India, and how he stands up and actually says that, you know, that you big people, you know, who think that the country is yours, the nation is yours, you summarily, you know, you just assign a name. You just call the, like Mahishasur, you know, you just assign the name Mahishasur to someone and completely destroy them. You know, that is why, if you were to look at the socio-political scenario, that is what it would represent, and that is the reason why I assigned the religion of Muslim to this man. And it was not to demonize them, but to bring out the socio-political reality of the present times. That is one thing. The other about the domes and the you know, the whole scheme of things, you know, about this destitute child being raped, being gang raped, and, you know, being set to fire, get gang raped and killed and set to fire. The whole scenario were supposed to, you know, speak about the life and death. You know, the whole film is about actually life and death. You know, and I wanted to like begin this film with the ghastliness of death. You know, and end the film with life. You know, with the preservation of life, like how the baby gets saved in the end and life is preserved, and there is hope that we might, you know, we might be able to save the girl child if we can, you know, correct ourselves. So it needed to begin with death, you know, and I found that you know, the representation of death can be the most apt at a crematorium, at a Hindu crematorium, and at a Muslim burial ground. Now one can say that there could be, you know, like visiting parties, like who could have done that to that girl, you know, not necessarily the grave digger or the dome, but it so happened that, you know, I could see these visuals, you know, that, you know, two domes were there and they were doing whatever they were doing, and then this girl came in and they chased her, and she went for rescue to the Muslim community and to the graveyard, and she was attacked by all four of them. This kind of visual came in, and this had a certain a certain ghastly appearance to it. And that is why I went for it. It was not to comment on the class of the domes or the grave diggers per se. It was something that I wanted a deathly ghastness to the whole thing, a ghastly, you know, feeling to the whole thing, that I wanted to place it at the Shamshan and at the Muslim burial ground. That was the reason, and it was not to if not, it was not for any other kind of reason. And coming to think of it, their crimes, they had done their bit of crime, whatever they did, but the other crimes that we see throughout the film, they're no less ghastly, to my mind. They're no less deadly than the ones committed by these four boys in the beginning. The crimes that are committed by the politician, the crime that is committed by the astronaut who turns away a pregnant woman from her doorstep, the crimes committed by even the political strategist who fails to save a woman in distress. These crimes are no less in terms of severity when being compared with this. So this was the idea.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions, comments?
Do you have any rejoinder to that, Shoibalda? Do you want to add to my response? Do you want to respond to my response?
No, not really. I just wanted to sort of, I mean, I can see, that you're starting at a place that is, where death is a daily occurrence, and these people drink and they sort of forget, try to get over the difficult job that they do by, entertaining themselves in different ways when they are waiting for bodies to arrive, and that I can see. But maybe a caste studies person will raise this question and say, why are you, not? Why couldn't that have been say a Brahmin pujari who's on his way to do puja with a body or something? That's just that's a question that might come from people who look at this whole subject from a different prism. That's possible, and that's also absolutely acceptable, because anything can be analyzed from any angle. As once you've made a film and put it out in the public domain, then you don't own it anymore. It's owned by the people who watch it.
Absolutely. And it's in that spirit that TFO works, that we who watch the film and discuss the film and make meaning of the film really own the film. Generally, Geeta and I, during the post-mortem sessions of each TFO discussion, we say if a discussion has crossed 10:30, it's been a good discussion. Today, we have crossed 10:30, so I can say that it's been a really good discussion. Ranjan, first of all, I didn't thank you in the beginning. It was very generous of you to make available your film to TFO, provide us the link so that we could all watch the film. Also, you gave us the contact of Mr. Shoibal Chatterjee, and you said that we could invite him to initiate discussion. So thanks very much for these two, and of course for joining the discussion today, Ranjan. And Mr. Shoibal Chatterjee, I'm sure it's a busy time for you, and you've taken time out of your busy schedule to spend time for TFO late in the evening to talk about Mahishasur Mardini. Thank you so much for joining us, Shoibal, for this discussion.
Entirely my pleasure.
Thank you, Shoibal. Thank you, Ranjan Ghosh.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone who has joined this
Thanks to
discussion
TFO
today.
for getting this done. It has been an honor, truly an honor. And having Shoibal Chatterjee among us has made this thing very, very special for all of us, I'm sure.
Thank you very much for having me here, because it's always a pleasure to be among cinephiles, people who share, a passion for cinema, and a particular cinema that is not just meant for entertainment, cinema that also provokes thought and challenges us to, sort of think beyond just what we experience in our own lives and make sense of the world. And that's been the experience that I've had here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so thank you
sir.
all.
Thank you, Jennifer.
See you all next week. You're most welcome to join us next week at the same time on TFO. So have a good night and a happy weekend to all of you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night.